and full details will be circulated in the next few days. So, moving on to the first substantive item on the agenda, the review of the Integrated Risk Management Plan and Performance. And may I ask John Anderson, please, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Purpose of this report is to provide the authority with an update on the delivery against our Integrated Risk Management Plan 2020 to 2024. Obviously, it's a 4-year plan, and this update covers year 3 of the plan, which is 2022 to 2023. Hopefully all members have had a chance to have a look at the report. I don't intend to read it through in detail, but I will highlight a few areas within the report and then talk through the performance against our RMP. So starting off with people excellence, we carried out an employment engagement survey in October 2023, presenting the outcomes to all colleagues in January 2023. The results show an improvement in employee engagement of 9% compared to 2029 and an overall engagement score of 79%. In many areas, we scored well above the fire service sector benchmark. I think this is a real proud achievement for us. And the fact we've got such a engaged workforce is a real credit to everyone that works here. And that is because of that we are able to deliver the service we do to our communities. I was going to discuss in community safety excellence our record year on safe and well visits, but I've been beaten to that by the chair, so it's very nice to see that recognised. I do also like to, in that area, to highlight the success of our partnership with Anglian Water, where we share data, and a hospital data agreement we have as well for partners, which has allowed us to reach a very high percentage of those people main at risk when we do our home fire safety visits. 84% of the people we visit are those that are most at risk. And we've also managed to get across the doorstep to those on 70% of occasions, which is a really high number when you're considering how vulnerable those people are and how difficult they are to engage with. So that's another real success story. In terms of operational excellence, we've done a lot of work with our on-call crews over the last few years. We've removed 135 ladders from the on-call, and that has allowed us to focus the limited amount of training time we have on the areas that are most important and produce the most benefit in terms of the operational response we provide to our communities. We've also introduced Crews of 3, which has provided approximately 1,000 additional hours of fire cover per month, and has seen an increase in mobilisations to most on-call stations. We've also increased the number of fire stations which carry out co-responding to support the ambulance service. So the other area I'd like to highlight is around our value for money. We have introduced a sustainability strategy to ensure that we are doing everything we can to limit our impact on the environment and reduce our carbon footprint. And we have a drive to net zero by 2030. And we have already started doing a significant amount of work around that strategy. So that's a brief overview of some of the highlights from the report. I'll now move on to our actual performance report against the RMP. So starting off with our attendance times. So first pump to most serious incidents in urban areas where the target is 9 minutes. This measure remains within the attendance time measure for the most serious incidents, although it's just slightly higher than previous years. That was mainly due to summer spate conditions. What I would say is a lot of the performance targets we'll discuss today should be seen in light of this reporting period contained summer spate conditions, which will impact on the performance. But if you see the general trend across 5 years, which I always think is a good way of judging our performance, it is very consistent and generally below our target. In terms of first pump to rural areas with a target of 12 minutes, unfortunately, this is slightly below the target we set ourselves at 12 minutes, 18 seconds. Which is slightly above last year, but given the summer state conditions, which were largely being dealt with by a lot of the on-call crews, that is not in our rural areas That is not surprising, and actually it's still a good performance with the challenges we have around retention and recruitment of on-call crews. So attendance times to all incidents within 18 minutes on 95% of occasions. It's slightly below our measure, which is at 94.6. So it's obviously very close, but not quite there. But if you look at the direction of travel, this year was the first year of the last 3 years where we're actually below that. And as said, with having to attend lots of incidents in rural areas, that is probably an impact, the direct impact of the spate conditions we were challenged with. So moving on to total fires, as you would expect, going again with the spate conditions, significant increase in the number of fires over the call year. As you will see, we were at 2,265 calls. So primary fires, again, significant increase. Before, you will see over the 5 years, there was a trend of generally reducing, that then obviously went up due to spate conditions again. Secondary fires, similar story. Non-domestic fires, again, there was a 20% increase in the number of accidental non-domestic fires over this call year compared to the previous year, and 10% increase over a rolling 5 years. I think it'd be interesting to see if we, depending on what spate conditions we have this year, if any, how that looks over the next few years. Number of business engagements, I'm very pleased to say the number of business engagements being conducted by watches are now back up to where we would expect them to be following the reduction in them during COVID years. And then we've been spending some time recovering from that and getting back to where we need to. But I'm happy to report that we are back to a good performance in this area. Fire deaths, sadly, we have to report one fire death in this reporting year. This was a smoking related fire. Fire casualties, over the rolling 5 years, we've seen a 42% decrease in the number of fire casualties. This year's total was 44, which is in line with the previous years. Road traffic collisions, there's been an 8% increase in the number of road traffic collisions attended compared to the previous years. Over the 5 years, when you look at the chart, you can see where it dipped down during the COVID years due to the reduced traffic on the road, and it's now back up to somewhere near where it was before COVID, but not quite as high. And the killed and serious injured figures have slightly decreased this year against last year, and we've seen a 5% decrease over a rolling 5 years. Special service attended, as you'll see from the graph, that's an area where we've had a lot of increased activity. That's not surprising when you see the pressure the ambulance service are on, and we've done a lot we can to support them during that time. But we've also seen an increase due to climate change in terms of flooding and other calls on our service, which are affected by situations which are beyond our control. Moving on to our people statistics. So the number of on-call recruits is up on the previous year from 34 to 40, and applicants we've had has gone up to 201 for 145. So that's a good news story. We're actually getting more people to apply for the on-call service, and we're actually converting them to people that are actually riding our appliances. The workforce diversity, the number of females is down from 24% last year from the previous year to overall 22.8% in on-call control and support, but it's up by 3 in the whole time. Female managers have increased to 24.2% overall. Okay, that's a brief overview of the report and the performance statistics, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, sorry. Excuse me. Technology. Yeah, thank you, Chair. We have some breaking news that I'd like to just raise under page 27 of your pack. That's page 27 and 142, item 9.2, where it does talk about in our IRMP about delivering new emergency mobilising technologies into our operational service. So many of you will have seen some announcements that have been in the press over the last couple of days. So I just wonder if the chair, if there's anything that you'd like to say. I do have a few comments I'd like to make, but I think the chair would like to say a couple of things if.
Yes, thank you. By way of update, we have sadly received an intent to terminate our arrangement, our highly successful nationally recognised partnership with Suffolk, which has lasted for 13 years and saved the taxpayer a really significant amount of money, at £12 million in that period. They intend to end the partnership and move on to take the control system in-house. Obviously, it's very disappointing. I think in particular disappointing that we learned in a way that we have not come to expect in our partnership working, as in we were more or less told that this is what they wanted to do and what was going to happen. We didn't decide this together. Having said all that, we wish them well, and we must focus on what's right for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough residents, and we will do so. We have an excellent team, and we are fully engaged in moving off of REMSDAC, which is the legacy system, which is our biggest risk if something happens to that. And until such point as Suffolk do finally leave our support, they are still going to rely on our service in the meantime. So it has all come, it's come about since the papers were published, so apologies, it's not covered in the papers, but I thought it's appropriate to air this point now. And I know members who've long served on the Fire Authority will be very disappointed to hear this, because this has been a long-standing partnership. So unless the Chief Fire Officer would like to add a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Just because clearly not all members are aware of the history behind the collaboration, I'll just get a few words, if I may. So as the Chair has said, we have been in partnership with Suffolk for 13 years. We came to Suffolk's assistance back in the day when they were looking to move their control system, and we were able to take on in partnership their control in the space of 9 months. It's been a very successful collaboration between us. In my view as Chief, I think it's an exemplar of collaboration. Collaboration is not the end, it's a means to an end. So what we have delivered is a better delivery of service to the communities of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We've driven out more than £1 million worth of savings per year from that collaboration. We continue to drive out those figures. And as the Chair has said, we have saved somewhere in the region of £12 million for the communities of Cambridgeshire and Suffolk over that time. So this is a big thing for both of us, particularly in light of our small relative budgets that we hold. The control system itself has been inspected at 3 occasions by Her Majesty's Inspectorate. The last 2 occasions we received good reports about how it's moving forwards, and it was very clear. If you read those reports, you can see that we were putting a lot of effort into making sure that the provision that we provided for Suffolk was as good as that we have in Cambridge. We've been inspected again. I am bound not to say too much, but what I would say is what we have had back from the HMI this time round is not different, and it's an improving picture. In terms of value for money, if you look at the fire and rescue service as a whole, we are risk-based organisations, so we don't deal with demand. The call rates in our control centre per day, per 24-hour period, is roughly 46 on average response appliances out that's dealing with incidents. So it might be multiple incidents, lots of calls. So dealing with calls, about 46 a day for Cambridgeshire and about 36 a day for Suffolk. So it's a small volume, but the way that we deal with incidents, it's not just responding and turning a fire appliance out. There's a lot more to it in terms of managing an incident from start to finish. So it's a valuable asset for us. It's something we can't do without. And clearly, two organisations operating is going to be much more effective and cheaper than one. So that does cause me, as your chief, some concern, because clearly the cost for running our control centre is going to increase when we part ways, to the tune, and again, this is very much a ballpark figure because this is very recent news, around £500,000 a year that we will have to find. So we went out to markets in partnership with our counterparts in Suffolk, and jointly we decided to procure a new system through a new supplier. Unfortunately, very shortly after we went out to procurement, we were then hit by the global pandemic, which caused us a huge amount of problems in trying to drive the system forward. As we know, it impacted businesses across the country, and we were no different. We've then followed up with an economic difficulties across the globe, and of course the Ukraine crisis has an impact as well. Further to that, our supplier has had some internal difficulties which were raised at the end of last year, caused us and Suffolk some concern. We have a management board that we work together to determine how we're going to deal with things, and at that time the reassurances we gained together were sufficient for us to decide to continue down the path that we were traveling. So that was the position up until this year. We know that Suffolk has undertaken a review of the situation. They haven't been able to share that with me. I know that was carried out in the early part of this year, but we didn't hear anything back to say that they had any concerns. More recently in May, we met to discuss some concerns that the Chief Fire Officer in Suffolk had, which we met, I think it was the 22nd of May, and we had a long conversation to thrash through where we were. Did we think that the system we were looking to put in place was viable? And the conclusion we drew at that meeting was we needed to wait a bit longer until July. So from the supplier's perspective, they have undergone a recent reorganisation. They are in profit. They are putting a lot of pressure on us to move forward now. We are getting a huge amount of support from them. So the decision of our meeting in May was to wait until July because it was looking positive. And if members ask me today, am I able to guarantee that our current supplier will provide us with the system? I can't provide you with those guarantees at the moment. I am more confident than I have been, a lot more confident. I'm getting some really good reports back. We are in France at the moment with our suppliers talking about the system and how we can make it run effectively. And they are coming over to see us, 4 developers next week, to continue that process. So, we are seeing a lot of energy being put into this, and there's a real appetite to make this happen for us. A couple of weeks after our meeting, I was invited to an informal get-together with the Chief of Suffolk, and that was last Thursday. And that was the first I heard of this. Sorry, that was last Friday. And that was the first I heard of this. Until that point, we hadn't had those discussions. And our impression was that we were together to that point, and we were going to be moving forward and then reviewing the situation in July. We talked about a plan B, which we have got if we need to put it in place, but we agreed that we'd be pushing ahead. So you will understand that it was a big surprise for us. So that's sort of the history, that's sort of where we are now. So the issue that we face as a service is that we need to get onto a new system as soon as we can. And that is becoming increasingly important because, as I said earlier, the current system we have is no longer being supported, it's not being refreshed, and we can keep it online, but we can't guarantee that will be forever. So the sooner we can get onto the new system, the better for us as an authority, and the better for certainly the residents in Cambridgeshire and the residents in Suffolk who we currently support. So what we have to do now, because clearly it's a complicated situation, if we are still moving towards bringing in a new system together, and the Chief Officer of Suffolk has given me his personal undertaking that they still wish to develop the system and bring it in play and bring it into being in the early part of next year. We're aiming at January. But clearly that adds to a complication, because then they will be looking to do something different as well. So moving forward, we've got to work through what exactly needs to be done between now and January. We've got to make sure that's done and get ourselves in a position where we can transfer to the new system at that point in time. And we actually will apply our best endeavours to work with Suffolk to maintain the system as best we can for them, on the understanding and the assurances we've been given that they will work with us. And so we then hope by January we'll be in a new system, it will then be stable, and then Suffolk will be able to do their work to bring into being their standalone command and control system. So that's sort of where we are. The risk for our communities in Cambridgeshire, I would say, is limited, other than the risk of our current system. So it's important that we get past that as soon as possible. The risks moving forward are again limited, and we do believe, and we've put a press statement out today, we will be able to continue to provide the same level of good service that we have done over the last 13 years and before to our communities. We will apply best endeavours to do the same for the communities in Suffolk, and we will work with Suffolk to try and make sure that happens. And of course, if Suffolk are able to put the time and resource in, then we will be able to provide an ongoing service for Suffolk. If not, then there's some discussions we'll have to have about how we can help them as best we can at that point in time. I think that's probably enough from me, Chair, and I'm happy to hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Maguire, then Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, this is disappointing news for us. I believe it will actually be disappointing news for the community in Suffolk in due course, where they were made aware of it, if they haven't already been. I mean, obviously, people appreciate it. I was around in those days when we first entered into this agreement with Suffolk. And as the Chief Fire Officer has already said, it was regarded as an exemplar system of working together, partnership. So the logic of it is still lost on many of us and will continue to be, I should imagine, for a long time. What I would like to say, there's an opportunity, and I haven't done personally anything at all yet to speak to anybody in Suffolk, although I know one or two of the councillors on Suffolk County Council. So I wanted to get, obviously, be at this meeting and hear where we were to date. What I would like to say through you, Chair, is to members, if they have any influence with your colleagues, your opposite numbers, politically or otherwise, or in office, with members in Suffolk, then I hope they will take that. One of the reasons I say that is because I know some members may not, well, you'll have heard me say before, Chairman, that unlike the police and the police commissioner, we, the authority, are responsible for the fire service operationally as well. So that's not a case of the Chief Fire Officer has to do what we say, we delegate so much to him. That is also true in Suffolk, but it works on a different system. We're a combined fire authority, as we know, through the combination order that was made with Peterborough City Council and the County Council. The fire authority in Suffolk is part of their Public Protection Committee, something we used to have way back in the 80s and 90s, which means that every member of Suffolk County Council has a responsibility for what the spending, even through that committee, clearly, and therefore they can't pretend, well, they can't say they're not aware of what's going on. So I'm a bit confused as to how the Chief Fire Officer has been able to derive at such a, what appears to be a positive decision in the way he's informed the Chief Fire Officer what's going to happen. So again, I would like, to hope that we can use our influence to make sure that not only the members at Suffolk County Council, but also the public are aware of the impact, both financially and in terms of risk in the interim, because we've all experienced problems of trying to bring new systems to bear. It seldom ever goes as smoothly as we'd like it to be. Are they making, is this a logical decision to make? Are they making a decision a fully informed decision? So as I say, through you, Chairman, I'd hope that members will, and unless I'm told otherwise, I will personally approach and say, are you really aware of what is happening? I don't understand the rationale, but I wonder if they do. So at that point, Chairman, I'll shut up and leave it for other members, but unless you tell me otherwise, I will use my officers.
No, I think it's absolutely fair for everyone to question and challenge this because there is a logic. There was a logic to the original partnership, and as far as I'm concerned, and I'm sure all members are the same, that logic applies just as much to today. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. I rather echo Councillor Maguire's comments. I mean, it is a very odd decision to take in this in this particular area, in these times of, let's be honest, very substantial financial constraint. And as Councillor Maguire wisely points out, setting up your own system is fraught with difficulty and is an extremely expensive and process that takes a very long time, with no actual guarantee at the end of all of spending all of that money and time that you've got a product that is able to be used with any kind of resilience. But anyway, that sounds as if it's Suffolk's problem rather than ours. And so from what I hear from the Chief Fire Officer, we are going to be in a relationship with Suffolk for really quite a long time to come in any event. So obviously he has made it clear that we will do whatever we can to continue to provide a resilient and efficient and cost-effective solution for them. When this, at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of April, we did, as is part of our regular agenda, review the various risks related to various items, which of course, ICS and MOBs, to put it in a short version, is one. And at the meeting, we questioned and were assured by officers that the supplier was now back on track, and that we would be able to look forward not only to the system coming as appropriate, but more importantly, in the light of the news today, perhaps, we would be looking at being almost a pathfinder for other authorities. So I suppose the slight element of expectation I have is that other fire authorities and fire services will now be looking at the service that we will be launching fairly soon and going, I hope, and perhaps Councillor Maguire could have chats with other neighbouring councillors, not just Suffolk. And I hope that other fire services are interested in joining with us in the same way that Suffolk did, to the very great benefit of Suffolk, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough residents, but doesn't want to anymore for reasons that are not entirely clear. But in any case, let's look to the future, keep with Suffolk until they no longer want us, and at the same time, look for exciting partnership opportunities across the Eastern region, if not somewhat wider. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jamil.
Yeah, certainly echo what Councillor Maguire and Kindersley said. It's just odd that I find that when we're being asked by civil servants to work with other agencies like the police and the ambulance service, however, within the fire service, we have someone who no longer wishes to work with us and to save money. My first thought it would be maybe we need to write to the Fire Minister, through you, Chair, and I may inform him that, you know, this is a successful thing that we've been doing, and we've saved so much money in light of what's gone on in terms of our budgets over the last 13 years. It's just astounding. And the second part of that is how you can meet 3 weeks ago and all of a sudden something changed. So obviously something's gone along and happened to them, or someone's turned their head or something. And I just don't think it's good on their part, things that we've been partners for so long, to just tell us, well, actually, we're not going to be involved with you any longer, without actually giving us a full explanation as to why, and then leave not only the residents of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but also Suffolk as well in this position. So my recommendation will be that we write to the Fire Minister and maybe even the inspectors and let them know that, saying, well, we're playing our part. However, with that particular thing, they're not playing ball.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Snatter and then Councillor Bywater.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that tip, Councillor Maguire. I was looking at their Suffolk website, and as you say, they make great play of the partnership arrangements, which makes me wonder about Norfolk and Essex. So just a point of information, do either of those counties have partnerships with other counties?
Would you like to?
I'm just wondering whether Norfolk or Essex have partnerships with any other counties. Is there a possibility that Suffolk is looking into partnership, or might we?
I can take that. So Essex do not currently have a partnership for their control room. They are implementing a new system as well, because they are currently on a REMSDAC-based system. So again, they have a burning platform like us. And Norfolk are actually on a East Coast consortium, or within an East Coast consortium, that again is going, we believe that's going through some turmoil at the moment. So I think the environment is changing almost daily, or it seems to be at the moment. So that's the position I'm aware of on those two.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Chris and John, for the briefing. Crikey, we've been here a long while. Councillor Kindersley, Maguire, Jamil, collectively, we've probably got about 50, 60 years on this fire authority. And I just, I was really shocked when I saw your email on Friday, Chris. I just can't understand the logic. I'm not going to pass judgment on Suffolk because I don't know enough detail. But to say I'm disappointed is an understatement, really. I think you, Chair, are getting cross-party support in this chamber in relation to the position of this authority. I think it's important that we still keep relationships. That's key. But we've also got to protect Cambridgeshire and Peterborough residents in this process and give them that value for money. I can't understand the logic for value for money where Suffolk are concerned, but I'll stand corrected if necessary. But I think, this is something that you get full member support, and I'll hear other voices in the room, but I don't feel that. And I think, if anything we can do as members to help the chief take this forward and have those conversations politically, then I think you've got that support.
Thank you very much. That's appreciated, and I've made a careful note of everything that's been said, and I will write as requested. And I think we all must play our part in doing what we can to maintain relationships, engage with Suffolk, and work very hard to make sure that we do realise this very sort of ambitious and progressive vision for Cambridgeshire. If it's all right, let's conclude the discussion of this particular point. And I'm just conscious that this was just one paragraph in John's paper, and perhaps there are questions that members have. Councillor Bywater.
Yeah, thank you very much. I didn't want to come on to the point of the actual full agenda we're looking at. John, thanks for the paper. As always, it's very detailed. Just about domestic fires, really. I know we've talked about primary fires, secondary fires, commercial fires. Have we seen an increase in domestic fires? Because I can't really see that. And it leads into my question. Members may have seen quite a public TV appearance from London Fire Brigade and Manchester Fire Brigade about the increase in electric scooters that are being charged at home, electric pedal cycles, and it was quite high profile on the news only a few weeks ago. And is that something that we as Cambridgeshire Fire Authority need to be concerned about?
Thank you, Councillor Bywater. I can get an exact breakdown of the primary fire statistics in terms of how many of those are dwelling fires, and more than happy to share that with the committee. I'm not aware of a great rise in domestic fires. I think most of these fires were born out of the spate conditions, which would have been around grass and heathland fires and various other things. So it wasn't a big spike in actual domestic fires that's caused the rise. In terms of your question around e-scooters, there is a rising risk with the number of lithium-ion batteries that we're seeing within properties and these scooters. We are doing quite a lot of work in terms of messaging from a community safety point of view, so people understand the risks, and they've got some really good guidance on how to mitigate that. And it's something that when we're out doing inspections that we are very minded to keep an eye on and provide advice and enforce if we have to on a fire safety point of view. But I think nationally there is a rise in those type of fires. It's a new and emerging market where there's more and more of these become. And as they age, they become more of a problem, like most products, where people start modifying and they get damaged. When they're brand new and they're being used as should be and well maintained and using the correct charges, etc., the risk is relatively low. But it's as they age and the problems start to come.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire, Taylor and Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, as John was presenting the RMP report, it was looking through the figures and he made reference to one of the people killed or seriously injured in road traffic collisions, and the fact that during the pandemic period, obviously, as we can see from the chart, the figures dropped. And it occurred to me that something we might want to maybe see sometime in the future is some sort of comparison with other authorities in regards to that particular measure. And the reason I say that is because there certainly appears to be an increase in demand for reduced speed limits on some of our roads. And I think it's Wales are about to go, or if it hasn't already happened, some blanket arrangement they're making for non-main roads to be all become 20-mile-an-hour roads. And it'd be interesting, since one of the arguments for people wanting to push for 20 miles is the safety effect. And it'd be interesting to see whether that particular measure is impacted upon. And I think we'd have to do that by obviously benchmarking against other places where they've introduced that 20 mile to see how effective that is in reducing road traffic collisions, or certainly the effect of road traffic collisions on the person, you know, as speed is apparently going to be reduced. So it's just a thought, Chairman, you might want at some stage take on board. John might want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Councillor Maguire. I think that's an interesting point about looking at those initiatives and to see what impact they have and whether it's something that we might want to look at in terms of coach. And we are key members of the Road Safety Partnership, and I will mention it to our representative from there to get it raised at the meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. What I want to touch on is the environmental issues or impacts within the service. It might not be a great time to bring this up at this precise moment with the previous item that we've just spoken about and the financial impact that this might have. But within the service, have we got any thoughts about changing over to HVO fuel instead of using diesel? If this is something that, you know, I'm sure the vehicles can take it. Within Huntingdonshire District Council, we are trialling some areas of our vehicles with HVO, and I know officers are very keen to look at some sort of collaboration with bulk buying, which would somehow try and get the purchase price down on HVO.
Thank you. I believe this one is for Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, we're really interested. We've actually got a tank full of HVO at Dogsthorpe fire station, and we are going to begin a trial in the north of the county where all of those appliances that can take HVO without any formal adjustment will be using it in the future. And then I mean, actually, I'd be really interested if you can pass me the details of your contact at Huntingdonshire, because that may well help us as well in the future, particularly given the location of the depot in Huntingdon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. To answer Councillor Maguire's issue about the 20-mile-an-hour issue in Wales, that went in and is now being reversed in a number of places because people don't drive at 20 miles an hour on a clear open road, which has implications for road safety of its own. But what I wanted just to say was this: the Overview and Scrutiny Committee considers the quarterly version of this particular report at every meeting. And so I think we're fairly up on all of the data and keeping an eye on the direction of travel. But one thing that has happened since our last meeting, which I would be very happy to hear about, is the implication for special services attended, which, as you can see, has substantially increased over the period. Now, we know that that is because we are going to incidents that other undertakers can't or won't go to. And you will also be aware there's been a recent announcement from the Metropolitan Police that they will no longer attend mental health episodes unless there is a danger to life. And that we didn't know when we were last considering this report. So I'd be interested to know, although Cambridgeshire hasn't moved to that position yet, one can't help but feel that in this financial climate, people are looking to save money in all sorts of places. So it may be coming. And I say no stronger than that. So how would that impact the special services attended? And is this something that we perhaps rather more generally need to put a bit more scrutiny into? Because you know, I'm very happy that we're doing corresponding with the ambulance service, but are there other opportunities? Are there other things to avoid, and so on and so forth? So I'd be interested to hear officer comments on all of that, please.
Thank you. Who would like to take that? John?
Thank you. Certainly with the mental health situation, I think that we're interested to see the impacts and what sectors it impacts on. I mean, I think it probably impacts across the board. In terms of, we've had no indication from the Cambridgeshire Constabulary that they're going to be following suit. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on that to see how the situation develops. In terms of how we're dealing with the increased demand, so when we get requests for support from the ambulance service or other agencies, unless it's something where there's an immediate life risk, which we will attend straight away, the duty officer will be involved and they will make a judgment of whether it's appropriate for us to be committing our resources to it, and if so, do we stay available at incident. So we're happy to go along and help, but if obviously a fire call comes on, we will then redeploy to the fire call, or actually it's something that is critical and that it needs our support, and therefore we will be unavailable and attend. And some of them will say, actually, we don't feel it's appropriate for us to attend this. So there is a level of scrutiny that we've introduced for our duty officers, and they meet on a weekly basis and discuss amongst themselves to ensure we have consistency. We also meet with ambulance service on a regular basis to talk through and make sure that's happening. And in terms of things we shouldn't get involved in, there's lots of things going on across the country where people are taking on different work for other agencies, particularly the ambulance service, and some of it we're keeping a watching briefing because we have some concerns about whether it's the right thing. A particular example is a lot of services are doing falls on behalf of the ambulance service. For us to take that on, I think we have concerns in terms of the amount of demand there would be and the impact that could have on us delivering our core services. So at the moment, we're not going down that road. If anything changes or there's an opportunity to do it because funding exists and we can do it in a different way, that might be more interesting. But the trouble is with something like this, if you take it on, it's very hard to step away from it once you start doing it. So we're very careful about what we enter into and what we don't.
Thank you. That's a very thoughtful response. Members, may I, are there any other burning points to be made? Thank you very much for the discussion, and thank you, John, for the report. It was excellent and we're happy to note it. Item 7, the outturn revenue and capital budget position. Please, Matthew, would you take this item?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the service and the authority met the statutory deadline to publish their accounts again, as we generally do. So we published ours on our website on the 31st of May. unfortunately, clearly there's still drafts until our auditors do finally come in. But they've got to do last year's first before they do this year. So that's a challenge. But nevertheless, so the paper you have in front of you outlines where we effectively finished. There are some decisions around carry forwards, but we've kept them to a minimum this for the last financial year. In terms of the overall position, we ended up at just £7,000 underspent, so pretty much broke even for the year. There's a couple of reasons for that. You'll see on the appendices, or certainly the first table, that we overspent on firefighter pay, which was to be expected because actually pay inflation was greater than we budgeted. But we underspent significantly on our professional support, and that was largely due to turnover of staff and the fact we really struggled last year to fill vacancies. So really one offsets the other, which is useful. The other significant movement, which came at the end of the year, which we were unaware of and we are still seeking clarity on, was significant increase in our business rate income. Now, we have sought a response from CLG, and what we're being told is it is a result of all of the special grants that were given to us through COVID. There was a reconciliation, and effectively, as part of that reconciliation, they dished a load more money out as on a one-off basis to fire authorities across the country. And we are not unique, because I've actually checked in with partners in the east of England and said Essex and Bedfordshire particularly, and they're in exactly the same position. We are seeking clarity as to what does this mean for the future, but let's take it. So what I've done, I've taken it and I've applied it. I've used half of it to top up our financial business continuity reserve for the next financial year, as in current financial year, to pay for pay awards and such like. So it will be used for good purpose. And the rest of it effectively offset the financial position. So we ended up basically balancing the budget for the last financial year. A number of areas for carry forward I've asked for, particularly around ESMCP. So this is the long-standing project that's been going for a very long time. We get money from the government. It's a grant. It does need to be spent at some point, but not at the moment. So we roll it forward. So I have to ask you to roll that forward. But beyond that, everything else is pretty much straightforward. And the finance team have done a very good job of putting us in this position. In terms of other things, reserves, you'll see our reserves have diminished significantly in the financial year. And that's largely because of the money we used out of the property development reserve to fund our new station and training centre at Huntingdon. So again, from a government perspective, there's obviously lots of pressure on how much authorities are bearing in terms of reserves. Well, our reserves have gone down, and so they're not quite as excessive as perhaps they might have been perceived previously. And the capital programme largely was pretty much spent. The significant challenge again this year has been around our vehicles. We are struggling to buy vehicles again and again. So beyond that, I don't think there's anything specific. I'm happy to answer any detail, but back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask Matthew, could you just go back to that additional business rate income, which is quite significant? If I understood what you said, you're not sure at the moment if it's just a one-off or it is going to be continued, because the concern about building something into a budget, yes, you can use it to offset something, but you can't obviously want to put it into your budget on the assumption it's going to be repeated. And I'm just concerned about any long-term effect if it doesn't come. Can you just... So
this is over and above the business rates funding that we ordinarily would budget for, Councillor Maguire. So our understanding is this is a one-off, and that's the clarity we're seeking, to make sure that for some reason there hasn't been some formula change that I'm unaware of that means we're going to get more business rates in the future. Members will be aware that actually we are part of the local pooling arrangement for business rates with the county council and district councils. So we do have some direct benefit from growth in the county, but this is disproportionate growth, and that's what we're saying, because this isn't what we can rely upon. Hence the reason why I've used it to offset the last financial year and put a little bit aside as a one-off for future.
Can I thank you, Matthew, for that? I'm just a little bit surprised that any organisation can receive a one-off benefit from central government for however it's worked without some explanation as to the longer term future or detail. But that's, I suppose that doesn't come as a surprise.
So yeah, and I think if you like, the clarification has been around this is a reconciliation of COVID grants, and I'm thinking, well, this is quite a long way past that now. But yeah, so we are still seeking clarification.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Councillor Kindersley.
Yes, Chair, because I forgot to mention it in the previous two items, there is discussion, or there's a certain amount of discussion about the new Huntingdon facility, which Councillor Taylor and I had a personalised tour of, and very splendid it is as well. So my two questions are, will it be used by, rented out as it were, hired by other fire services? And the second is there any news on the disposal of the old site?
So in terms of the income generation on the new site, we wanted to give it a certain amount of time to bed in and understand what our requirements were before we actually start to think about whether or not there's any capacity to use it elsewhere. We're still going through that process, Councillor Kindersley, so I suspect that's going to be at least another year before we understand fully how much capacity we had in that site. In terms of the old site, I'm still awaiting response from the district council. I've got a number of queries, but in essence, we are now looking to move probably in the summer to put the site on the market, and it will probably be through some sort of formal market testing process that we will go through with a view for selling it by the end of the financial year.
Thank you. Chris, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just to add to what Matthew's just said, the thing we must be very cognizant of is, whilst we are keen, if we can, to include other fire services, and maybe if we can do some training for them, we have to be careful about whether we make money from that or not, because if we do seek to make a profit, we then would need to put in place a trading company as a fire authority, and that obviously will have expense attached to it. So I think the keenness is there. If there is the opportunity, we'll look at it, but we need to factor in the costs of doing that. We will have to conform to the requirements of the Fire Rescue Services Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. With the professional support staff turnover and the subsequently underspend last year, are we expecting this underspend again this financial year? Have we recruited into these positions yet?
I think we'll expect a much smaller underspend in the current financial year. We had recruited, but again, like all the best laid plans, we are still suffering from an element of turnover. So particularly in the professional support area, there people move quite often, so it inevitably creates an underspend in that budget.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor, would you like to follow up?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So within that paragraph, you have put that you've ensured workloads are appropriately managed. Are you quite confident that the staff are not overworked? By the sounds of it, that they're having to take on other roles because of the positions that are vacant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant challenge. I'm not going to dispute that. We try and manage workloads, and actually it's more the issue is around prioritising and making sure that people within their own areas are not trying to deliver everything that perhaps they set themselves at the end in any given financial year or calendar year. And actually for us as managers and through our team, it's making sure that we engender that culture, don't burn out. So absolutely, that's the support we're trying to give, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much. Unless there's any further points, we're asked to note the position, the financial position, and approve the requested budget carry forwards. Are you happy to support those recommendations? Shall we have a show of hands? Yes, we're all unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item is the pay policy statement. Matthew.
So this is just a very brief update. I brought the pay policy statement to the Fire Authority in February, and all I've done is brought it back again to reflect the retrospective pay award that was applied to both our Grey Book and Green Book colleagues, and also the Chief Officer group. So it's nothing more than that. Nothing changed. There's some numbers being updated with the percentages that were appropriate for the last financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments about that? No, we're asked to note the changes made to the current pay policy statement, which is at Appendix 1, following the settlement of national pay negotiations. Is everyone happy to do that? Yes, agreed. Thank you very much. Item 9, I hand over to Shaheen, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, you have in front of you the final report of the independent remuneration panel on allowances. The executive summary, which is at page 63 of your papers, shows those allowances. This has been arrived at through, as you're aware, I've reported previously, a very experienced panel. They've done benchmarking, spoken to members and officers, and have come to their conclusions. Very few changes. The main changes are simplification of the special responsibility allowance, which don't operate as they were originally set up to do, and indexing of members' allowances with the percentage increase to staff pay, which again is best practice. Overall, there's a very modest increase in the scheme, and it's within the budget envelope that we have for members' allowances. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions, but if not, my recommendation is that that is implemented as of today's date, and then we can track it back to every annual meeting. Grateful.
Comments? Thank you. Are members happy to support the 3 recommendations set out in the paper? Yes, thank you. Item 10. Again, Shaheen, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report just finalises our review of what we're calling our suite of corporate governance documents. Very little has changed in the world of corporate governance. The SIP for Solace framework remains as it is, and so this has just been an updating exercise to just change terminology in light with management practices in the service at the moment. The member officer protocol, which is very similar to those that you will have in your constituent authorities, it remains clear and fit for purpose. What we've just done, as I say, is updated some of the language in that. The second document is the Code for Corporate Governance, and again, that still reflects the SIP for Solace framework, which you will be aware of through your principal authorities. Minor clarification, some links attached to other documents for transparency. And I think one of the main changes we've made is just to codify the practice we already have, which is to make sure we publish any urgent decisions taken by the Chair in the interest of transparency. And with that, Chair, I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Shaheen? Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment actually in relation to one of the clauses which I had never noticed before. So I regret I may have breached this, where members obtain agreement in advance from stations before dropping in to say, hello, how is the training going? So just draw that to everybody else's attention in case they have local stations.
Thank you. That's a very valuable point to raise. Are members happy to support the recommendations? Yes. Thank you very much. Then we come to item 11, which is appointments to committees and outside bodies. Dawn, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. It's just a few minor things. The main changes relate to Councillor Hathorn's appointment and some changes in proportionality. There's a few additions and changes to the document you've got in front of you. The Conservative appointment to Appeals Pension Committee should read Councillor Bywater rather than Councillor Maguire. And I've also got a number of Labour substitute appointments, which are blank on your copy. Appeals Pensions Committee will be Councillor Jamil. The substitute on Disciplinary and Grievance Committee will be Councillor Goodliffe. And the change on Appeals Committee will be Councillor Ray. If any members have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Questions? No, thank you very much indeed. So are we happy to support? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Then we have appointment of chairs and vice chairs of our two committees. We moved to the appointment of Chair of Policy and Resources. And do I have nominations for chair? Councillor Du. Thank you, and Councillor Jamila seconded. Do we have any other nominations for chair? No, thank you very much. Councillor Goodliffe is confirmed as chair of the Policy and Resources Committee for the municipal year 23-24. Now to the appointment of Vice Chair of Policy and Resources Committee. Do I have any nominations for Vice Chair? Councillor Goodliffe.
Can I nominate Councillor Jamil, please?
Thank you. And seconders? Councillor Kindersley. And any other nominations for Vice Chair? Thank you. In that case, Councillor Jamil, you're confirmed as Vice Chair of the Policy and Resources Committee for the municipal year 23-24. Now move to the appointment of the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do I have nominations for Chair? Councillor Jamil.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you very much. And seconder? Councillor Goodliffe, thank you very much. And do we have any other nominations for Chair of Overview and Scrutiny? Thank you very much. Councillor Kindersley, you are confirmed as Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the municipal year 23-24. And now we move to the appointment of Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Do we have nominations for Vice Chair? Councillor Kindersley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Jamil. Thank you very much. And do we have any other nominations for Vice Chair of Overview and Scrutiny? No. Thank you very much. We thank you, Councillor Taylor. You're confirmed as Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the municipal year of 23-24. So then we have move on to agenda item 13, which is the minutes of the Policy and Resources Committee in January and the draft committee minutes held in April. And item 14 is the minutes of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 20th of April for noting. Are there any comments any members would like to make about any of those minutes or questions? No, thank you very much. We've commented already on the work the Overview and Scrutiny Committee has done in relation to our control system project. So with that, that concludes the meeting for today. Thank you very much for attending and contributing, and for all the work that's been done to produce the papers. The next scheduled meeting will take place on the 9th of November. Thank you very much.